Hi, my name is Ross Freshwater.
Can you describe your personal experiences or recollections of the events on September 11th, 2001?
Yeah, so it was my second week of teaching ever. I was a first year teacher. I was in a Chicago public high school that catered to 70 different nationalities. And about 10% of our student population was Muslim.
Hi, Mr. Jake Forstek. Yeah, I was in graduate school at UW-Whitewater, and it was a Tuesday morning, I believe, and I had woken up and drinking coffee, getting ready for class, and I believe I heard something about a plane hitting, and I didn't really know what was going on.
As you maybe already know, it was a beautiful early fall day. It was probably 75, 80 degrees out. It was sunny, blue sky.
My name's Jeff Leto. Absolutely. It was definitely the worst day of my life. I was in the Marine Corps, and I was almost out, and all of a sudden, September 11th happened.
And I was running up the stairs to my class. A colleague of mine was running down the stairs. And he turned around and he goes, "Did you hear?" I'm like, "No, what?" He's like, "World Trade Center, plane just hit it."
I remember I was in a rifle maintenance class, actually, and we kind of got word that someone had flown an airplane into one of the Twin Towers. We thought it was like an accident.
Heard something, but I was not really aware of what was happening. And so I ended up going to class, and I was taking class at grad course at UW-Whitewater, and I remember walking into class, sitting down, and then one of my classmates came in screaming and was hysterical.
So I ran up the stairs, literally ran into my room as the bell rang. And I looked up and there were 30 very expectant teenage eyes like, "Did you hear?" I'm like, "What?" You know, "A UFO hit the World Trade Center."
But it quickly escalated to the point where we realized this was no accident, and we had to pack our stuff up. We quickly realized it wasn't a drill, and I thought I was going off to World War III.
Rumor mill, this is before smartphones. 20 minutes, the rumor mill up and down the hall had just grown bigger and bigger and bigger. My room didn't even have a TV, so we didn't really know what was going on.
We had heard rumors, because that's all we had in the military at that time was rumors, that terrorists were attacking every single skyscraper in major American cities. And my dad at the time worked in what was called at the time the Sears Tower. It's now called the Willis Tower in Chicago. And so here I am thinking I'm going off to World War III, thinking my dad is dead somehow. I can't contact my family, and it was just a terrible, terrible day.
As the minutes ticked by and other people checked in on their televisions, we realized what was actually happening.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
That looks like a second plane. Has
I
just
did not
hit.
see a plane go in. That
Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
One plane colliding with one twin tower, 18 minutes later, oh my God. Oh my God. If you can imagine the situation could get any worse, you've just seen it get worse. That was the second tower of the World Trade Center collapsing before our eyes. Both towers at the World Trade Center, 110-story buildings, have collapsed.
For the next 2 weeks, my Muslim students did not come to school. Hindu family at our school that got pelted with fruit in a supermarket parking lot. Somebody couldn't tell the difference between a Hindu and a Muslim. A lot of our students were angry, and the principal had an assembly. And the principal got up to the microphone, and before she could speak, a young man from Afghanistan literally came out of the audience jumped up on stage and said, "Hey, Mr. Hernandez, if I can just have that microphone for a minute." And he switched to Chicago, and he was like, "Yo, I got something to say. I see y'all messing with my Afghan and Iraqi brothers and sisters walking around the hallways, and it's got to stop. Because our parents came here because they believed in America. And I'm here because I believe in America. And we're here because we are Americans." And every time he said America, more students would cheer. And he neutralized what could have been a bad situation. After that young man stepped up, he kind of eased the tension in our school.
Were there any specific moments or images from that day that has stayed with you over time? If so, could you describe them?
I mean, I had seen later the horrible video of people jumping off the Twin Towers because they were burning. So that kind of left a horrible memory of the event, the tragedy.
Yeah, not so much in the moment from my experiences, but whenever I think of September 11th, I always think of that famous iconic picture of a fireman standing, a couple firemen, I think it is, hoisting up the American flag on top of the rubble.
I went to Ground Zero 1 month later. It was still on fire. We had to get off 2 train stops early because when the towers fell, they crushed the train station. It smelled like a mixture of burning jet fuel and death. You could literally smell rotting humans. There were volunteers going around picking up debris. They should have been wearing respirators. Many of them were not. I felt sick after about 20 minutes. Some of those folks spent weeks there. Many of them contracted cancer. Dust, about this much dust on everything. The only business that was open was a hot dog vendor. And it literally looked like he dug his way out of the dust. There were big gaping holes in all the buildings surrounding the site. Another vivid memory I have, I had dinner with a woman who was in the World Trade Center just a few minutes before it went down. She was about to get on the elevator to go to work, and a security guard said, "A plane just hit the other tower. I probably wouldn't go up right now." And she turned around, she walked out. A few minutes later, the other plane hit. A few minutes after that, both towers went down. A lot of her colleagues were killed. And her company said, "Well, you're transferring to Chicago anyway. Maybe you should just go to Chicago." And so she literally got in a car, drove to Chicago, had dinner with me a few days later. And she looked at us and she said, "I'm supposed to get back to work, but my laptop was in the World Trade Center. I don't have it. I can't work." My girlfriend at the time, her landlord had a really grumpy Russian maintenance man. Her pipe broke on 9/11, and he came in the house, and he was the opposite of grumpy. He sat on the couch right next to us. We watched the news over and over. Everybody was together on that day. He was no longer our grumpy maintenance guy. He was a fellow American. And we sat on that couch and we took it all in.
How did 9/11 affect your community or the communities around you? Were there any immediate or long-term changes?
It definitely did bring people together in a way that I kind of wish we were brought together today.
One of my friends, Sean Talon, he was a firefighter in Ladder 10, and he was missing. He actually they found him, I believe, like 6 weeks later.
We seem to be very divided politically during 9/11. There was no idea of like Democrat or Republican or no one cared who was going to win the next election. We truly, for the first and probably only time in my life, we're all just Americans first and foremost.
For those 6 weeks, and after we knew our friend had died, our fellow Marine, we were very, I guess, emotional, angry, thinking about getting revenge, retribution.
And I think that's probably the biggest legacy of 9/11 is if we can remember what that felt like, I think we would do well for ourselves as a country.
Went out there for his funeral, and I heard a lot of great eulogies, especially his sister spoke and brought everybody to tears.
We almost immediately went to war against Afghanistan. Was the first place that we went. Osama bin Laden was housed by the Taliban government in Afghanistan. So pretty quickly, we had boots on the ground in Afghanistan. That affected our community because our school catered to war refugees. I had a student who came to my room for lunch, and he sat down and he said, "Hey, can we talk?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "My father was the vice president of Afghanistan." Whoa, I had no idea. "Yeah, his plane was shot down. I lost him." It's like, "Yeah, so I was getting on the bus the other day, and a guy from the Middle East sat next to me, and he said, 'Hey, I've got some DVDs in my backpack. Beheadings of hostages. You want to buy some?'" And I looked at him and I'm like, I'm not really into that. No, thank you. And he said, "Mr. Freshwater, I want to join the U.S. Army. I'm going to go to an Army training camp where it is set up like an Afghan village. U.S. soldiers learn about Afghan culture and language. This helps them assimilate. I'm going to join the Army so that I can train those soldiers." And so that young man did exactly that.
Did you witness any acts or heroism or inspiring stories of people coming together in the aftermath of 9/11? Could you share any of those that come to mind?
Fellow Marines who had ended up going to Ground Zero, and I knew a firefighter who, he was a Chicago firefighter. He went out there, and a lot of people went out there to help out and clean up and do things and try to search for the remains or see if there were any survivors. And subsequently, they were exposed to a lot of, carcinogens or whatever they breathed in and were suffering later. So they did that at great risk to their own personal health.
And I remember one of our, I think he was our platoon sergeant or someone in our company. He kind of could read the room and sense that we were all nervous, that we were all about to be put into something that was going to be pretty, the stakes were going to be pretty high.
What Sean Talon had done, like I said, he was a firefighter. In his job that day, he was on the breach and rescue team. And on the way up, he was a real physically fit dude. He was wearing his firefighter uniform, which was one of the other firefighters was a little bit older gentleman. And I think he had a heart attack or some cardiac arrest while they were walking up the stairs, and Sean resuscitated him and sent him down with the fellow firefighter. He, like I had mentioned, he was formerly an EMT, so he saved his life. Both of those guys got out, but he continued rescuing people. And I guess that day, there was probably countless people he saved before he, came to his end.
And I remember he kind of gave us a speech. He said, "Look, if you think you're scared, the world is scared right now, and they're looking to you for answers. They're looking to you to solve this problem. So, you need to, get over what you're feeling right now and put the weight of the world on your shoulders, and, let's go." And that kind of helped me put my fear away and be like, "Look, I signed up to be a U.S. Marine, and it's time for me to do my job. So let's go."
What do you believe are the most important lessons or takeaways from 9/11 that we should remember as a society?
Life is fragile. Anyone can go out and cause damage. It's very easy to hurt people. It takes a lot more self-control and creativity and love to do good things that build up and can last. And so, but you've got to fight back with kindness and love, I believe.
I think it was Osama bin Laden's goal to bait us into a conflict. I think that the war in Iraq was a mistake.
Like I said, that just the coming together, there was no Republican or Democrat or there was no sense of like the next election. It was like, hey, what can I do for you? Hey, are you guys holding up okay? Anyone who was alive during that time remembers just like this sea of American flags that like every single American block had just American flags everywhere. If there's one positive thing to come out of 9/11, I think that's it. Because for just a fleeting moment, we were all really unified in a way that we haven't been since.
In the years since 9/11, have you noticed any changes in people's understanding or perception of the events?
Yeah, it is like with every single historical event, the further away you get from it, the less personal it feels, the less sting is there. I would like us to not lose that sting, especially those of us who lived through it, to remember exactly what that day felt like. And so yeah, in that sense, the sting of that day has kind of mellowed out a little bit, and yeah.
Yes, I think that a lot of people know that the Iraq War was a mistake.
It's just interesting that, to me, it feels like it wasn't that long ago. But then to think about, like, there's a lot of people, like, you weren't even alive when that happened. So I think it's like any other attack or tragedy, Pearl Harbor or something like that. I think it's important to remember these things because they shape our culture in our history.